খিলঞ্জীয়া লোকৰ খাদ্য স্বতন্ত্ৰতা আৰু সুৰক্ষা সম্পৰ্কীয় আন্তঃৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় অভিনয়। অসমৰ খিলঞ্জীয়া জনগোষ্ঠীসমূহৰ পৰম্পৰাগত খাদ্য প্ৰস্তুত কৰা ব্যৱস্থা আৰু বজাৰ সম্পৰ্কত দৃষ্টিপাত। ৰাষ্ট্ৰসংঘৰ প্ৰত্যক্ষ নিয়ন্ত্ৰিত সংগঠন ইণ্টাৰনেশ্যনেল ৱৰ্ক গ্ৰুপ ফৰ ইণ্ডিজেনাছ এফেয়াৰ্ছৰ উদ্যোগত 29 আগষ্টত খিলঞ্জীয়া লোকৰ খাদ্য স্বতন্ত্ৰতা আৰু সুৰক্ষা সম্পৰ্কীয় এখন আন্তঃৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় ৱেবিনাৰ অনুষ্ঠিত হৈছিল। আমেৰিকা যুক্তৰাষ্ট্ৰৰ এৰিজোনা দেশৰ এৰিজোনা চহৰৰ পৰা 28 আগষ্টত আৰু ভাৰতীয় সময়মতে 29 আগষ্টৰ ৰাতি 12:30 বজাৰ পৰা 2:40 বজালৈ অনুষ্ঠিত হৈছিল এই ৱেবিনাৰ। আদৰণি ভাষণ দিছিল এণ্ডাৰ্ছ অস্কলে। সমন্বয়কসকল আছিল চাউল ভিচেণ্ট ভাস্কুৱেছ, জানেনে য়াজি আৰু এণ্ডাৰ্ছ উস্কল। ৰাষ্ট্ৰসংঘৰ এই বিষয়ৰ প্ৰচেষ্টা সম্পৰ্কত ব্যাখ্যা দাঙি ধৰিছিল চাউল ভিচেণ্ট ভাস্কুৱেছে। পৃথিৱীব্যাপী সুৰক্ষিত অঞ্চল আৰু খিলঞ্জীয়া লোকৰ অধিকাৰত ইয়াৰ প্ৰভাৱ সম্পৰ্কে ব্যাখ্যা দাঙি ধৰিছিল আন্দ্ৰিয়া কাৰ্মেনে। খাদ্যৰ স্বতন্ত্ৰতা আৰু খাদ্য অধিকাৰ বিষয়ত ৰাষ্ট্ৰসংঘৰ বিভিন্ন মঞ্চত খিলঞ্জীয়া লোকৰ অংশগ্ৰহণ শক্তিশালী কৰিবলৈ কেনে কৌশল গ্ৰহণ কৰা উচিত সেই বিষয়েও আলোচনা হৈছিল। পৃথিৱীৰ বিভিন্ন দেশৰ প্ৰতিনিধিয়ে যোগদান কৰা এই ৱেবিনাৰত ভাৰতৰ একমাত্ৰ অসম সন্মিলিত মহাসংঘৰ কাৰ্যকাৰী সভাপতি মতিউৰ ৰহমানে প্ৰাচীন অসমৰ ৰাজধানী গড়গাঁৱৰ পৰা অংশগ্ৰহণ কৰিছিল। ৰহমানে অসমৰ খিলঞ্জীয়া লোকৰ পৰম্পৰাগত খাদ্য, বিভিন্ন ৰোগৰ পথ্য, সামাজিক পৰিৱেশ ৰক্ষা কৰি খেতি কৰা পদ্ধতি, স্বাস্থ্যসন্মত খাদ্য পৰম্পৰাৰ কথা দাঙি ধৰাৰ লগতে যধে মধে খিলঞ্জীয়া লোকৰ মাটি অধিগ্ৰহণ কৰি চৰকাৰে খিলঞ্জীয়া লোকৰ প্ৰতি ভাবুকিৰ সৃষ্টি কৰা বিষয়টো দাঙি ধৰে। এই ক্ষেত্ৰত খিলঞ্জীয়াৰ প্ৰতি চৰকাৰৰ কোনো আঁচনি নাই বুলি উল্লেখ কৰি আন্তঃৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় সহযোগিতা বিচাৰে।
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this second meeting in our International Indigenous Peoples Forum on food security. I would like to tell you a little story or anecdote, perhaps, which came to me as I was driving from my home village, Guadagno, to Alta, which is a place some of you may remember in the preparation of the UNDRIP. But coming here, we crossed a little river coming from a mountain valley up here. And it's not a large river, but in 2010, the Norwegian road authorities were mesmerized. They were completely taken because this little river suddenly had taken out the bridge. It had taken out the fundament for the bridge. So the road was closed, and they spent a year or so repairing this bridge. And this was a great surprise to them, something that they did not foresee. And then some years later, last year, this happened again. And once again, they were completely overtaken by the fact that this seemingly little river had once again managed to ruin at least parts of this bridge, which they had redone. So this was a repeated surprise for the road authorities. But for us as Sami people, indigenous to the area, we know the name of this river, because the name of this river is Garrayohka, and it means in our language, the fierce river. And we know from the past that this river, though it may seem small, has the power to suddenly roll boulders. And so to us, this was not a surprise as much. And this lack of understanding is, of course, a problem. In this case, it was a problem for the Norwegian road authorities and mainstream society for their planning against extreme events. But of course, for us, it's also a challenge that there's a lack of understanding with national states that have taken upon themselves to manage our areas, to manage our homelands, often without our consent. And so that illustrates, I think, part of the challenges that are, I believe, before us all in a time of rapid changes observed in the world. Well, to go straight to the today's agenda, we will be discussing how we together can strengthen the participation of Indigenous peoples in different UN bodies to address issues important and relevant for our food sovereignty and our rights, specifically our rights to food. We will be hearing reports from the pre-summit, the UN Food System Summit in Rome, where we will have reports from Bernice Sanchez Lozada and others, and we will hear some ideas and thoughts on next steps from Myrna Cunningham as we continue. We will have a look at the UN Committee on Food Security, and specifically the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism by Sol Vicente Vasquez. We will also have a report on the so-called 30-30 plan for creation of protected areas on a global scale by Andrea Carmen, and a proposal for a working group. There are some concerning issues ahead, so we'll hear more of this. We have several speakers on the topic. We will also hear about any other upcoming events and announcements important for the work we try to do in this group, and round off also with a discussion on how we can continue to strengthen our voices and strengthen our cooperation, bringing the voice from the ground to the international bodies. So that is, in general, today's agenda. Before we go there, though, I will invite Amy Juan to give us a cultural opening and invocation. Amy, the floor is yours. That's a main topic of today, reporting back from the pre-summit of the Food System Summit in Rome. Then, first of all, to give the floor to Berenice Sanchez Lozada, representing the global consultation process. I believe we will have some reports from Indigenous participants first, to get an idea of key outcomes.
I can go ahead and report. I was there with Bernice, and so we attended the UN Food Systems pre-summit in Rome at the end of July. And there was a delegation that was proposed to be much bigger, but due to COVID restrictions and lateness in processing funds and getting travel arrangements, we ended up, I believe, with only about 8 Indigenous peoples delegates. The summit was unlike any other UN meeting that we have attended. It was a in-person as well as a virtual mixed format. For the in-person events, a lot of the discussions around the different topics were not structured to be dialogues. And so it was often just people sharing generalized statements and reports. As Indigenous peoples, we did work with FAO representatives and the Secretariat to host our own event on Indigenous peoples' issues.
Our territories. So this is very important what we've highlighted, and part of this is to strengthen our alliances, as Myrna has said. And I think if this suggestion by the Afro-descendant brothers and sisters, I think it would be very important to be able to coordinate with them also, because, for example, in Mexico, we do work closely with our Afro-descendant brothers and some of the Afro-Mexican brothers and sisters and other denominations that they have, but we are continue to struggle to fight for their rights. And so what they're demanding, I think, is good, and that we need to coordinate with them.
Yet, without questioning the fact that the payment of this fine and these debts are totally unfair and unjust and should not have to be paid, and people should not be put in prison and criminalized in protected areas, because what's going on is there are trespassers in our territory who are trespassing on our territory and trespassing on our rights. And this is all related to land takeovers that have to do with industry, mining, and mega projects, because 2030 is a scandalous program.
Probably, unless people want to meet again before the food summit, since we originally grouped around input into this issue, and we can see there are some Indigenous participants that are going to be forging ahead. And I also want to recognize and give respect to Myrna, to represent Indigenous peoples on that advisory committee for all the reasons we've all mentioned. It's a hard job, and we shouldn't, feel that she's part of something else and not part of us. I think we should come together again after and just hear what the outcomes are. And also, since we did talk about the Committee on Food Security today, as we mentioned, that's one of the UN bodies, either by itself or in conjunction with the other Rome-based food sovereignty or food systems bodies that are supposed to follow up with the recommendations. So it might be good to hear how that process is going to go on as well afterwards. So if I can make a suggestion that we meet after to hear the final report of the outcomes of this process we've been engaged in. People can suggest a date. And also, we wanted to open up to see if there are other agenda items. I know right now a couple of the participants, like Frank and others, have been involved in the Indigenous Caucus for the current meeting of WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, where the integrity of our original seeds is, I guess you could say, on the table. Might be good to get a report from that. But there are other people that may want to report on other processes that do interrelate. I know the World Conservation Congress is going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. We have delegates going, and I'm on a virtual couple of panels there. And the issue of protected areas is going to be a big issue there.
Thank you. I will turn the floor to Saul now and have a look at whom we have raising their hands from attendees. Saul, please. I see we have among attendees someone named Few More, it seems, and then someone whose name I'm unfortunately unable to pronounce, but I will give the floor first to a Few More.
Thank you, Anders. Thank you, everyone. I'm very impressed with the overall knowledge in the whole meeting. The question of food sovereignty cannot be, in my opinion, separated from the 500 years of colonial imperialism, and that goes back to the papal bulls of 1452, 1493 that gave authorization to the peoples of Europe to dominate and exploit, enslave the whole of the world. So that cannot be separated, and therefore the continuous treatment in on the 5 continents, not just in the Americas, but in Africa, in Australia, New Zealand, China, India, everywhere else.
If I could just ask if Saturday the 25th of September seems like a good date to everybody to meet again to get the outcomes of all of these things we've been talking about, and we'll go back to the time frame that will allow Asia and Africa to have an easier participation. You could try Saturday the 25th and maybe look at 6 a.m. again for Pacific time. I know that's early in the morning for you, Anders, but maybe we can.
Now, I will turn the floor quickly, to the person whose name I am utterly unable to read, but I will pass the floor to you and hear your perspective briefly.
Hello, I am from Assam, the Indian state. Have you heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
About food sovereignty, indigenous traditional food are very helpful for different diseases, but the government have no any policy for preservation of these valuable traditional foods and the plants. Secondly, the indigenous food production and harvesting methods also helpful for ecosystem, but the government have no any policy for the indigenous people in this regard. Number 3, the indigenous food production free from technology is hygienic and healthy for human being, but government has no policy in this regard. Number 4, indigenous peoples are struggle feed their families. Family farmers struggle to stay on their land and struggle against land grabs that threaten their livelihoods and even their lives. The government of India and our state government Assam have no any policy for the land protection of the indigenous people. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think time has caught up with us, as I wish for us to keep the timeline set in respect for the time of all participants. We have a way forward. We have the next meeting on September 25th. We will look at the agenda. And I think the last thing that I will do before turning the floor to Amy is to say that a big thank you to our interpreters, who are doing such a marvelous job in making us understand each other. Thank you so much. Your work is so much appreciated. I think this is what we are able to do. The clock is here. So by this, I will now give the floor to Amy for the final closing. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Anders, and thank you to Frank for your grace in allowing me to close this out today. Song from my people, my tribe, and it's a song of encouragement. Sapo mama sematonore, sapo mama sematonore, Yawarka semawoye, sapo mama sematonore. Sapo mama sematonore, sapo mama sematonore. Javarka Jamoe, Sapo Mama Simaton Nori, Sapo Mama Simaton Nori, Javarka Jamoe, Sapo Mama Simaton Nori, Sapo Mama Simaton Nori. Jawarka Jamoyim, Tapos Mama Simatonori. Danataka, may you continue to bless us and guide us in our work, in our important work for protecting our people and the world and providing good environments, safe environments, and healthy environments, especially our foods to continue to nourish us now and into the future. So, Sapo, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. We're just starting out together in this new forum, and I think so far it's been really, really important to be able to share everything that everybody said. I want to thank you all, and I hope that you join us, whether or not the event is in the middle of the night for you. We do appreciate sharing the time zones with each other, and maybe someday this body will be able to meet together in person, which would be beautiful. I would love that. So thank you very much. Thank you so much, Anders. You're a wonderful moderator. We really appreciate it. Thank you, the interpreters. Thank you to Amy for her closing, and to everyone that participated and everyone that listened today. We'll see you soon, and I wish you also the best on your work and efforts. Please pass the word and invite others to join for the next meeting, and we really appreciate everybody. Thank you. Have a beautiful day, evening, night, wherever you may be.
I am Mr. Motiur Rahman from Assam. I am the working president of Assam Sammilita Mahasangha. Mahasangha is the Indigenous Peoples Confederation of Assam. I want to say in this international webinar 4 points. Number 1, the indigenous traditional foods are very helpful for different diseases, but the government have no any policy for preservation of these valuable traditional plants. Number 2, the indigenous food production and harvesting methods also helpful for ecosystems, but the government have no any policy for the indigenous farmers. Number 3, indigenous food products are free from technologies. It is hygienic and healthy for human being, but the government have no any policy in this regard. Number 4, the indigenous peoples are struggling to feed their families. Family farmers struggle to stay on their land and struggle against land grabs that threaten their livelihoods and even their lives. The government of India and the government of Assam have no any policy for the land protection of the indigenous people. Thanking you.